Hello everyone, and welcome back to Void War Studios, where I feel I've been remiss. I was doing some Imperial Guard videos, wasn't I? So let's get back at this and put the towel on the shelf just for this weekend, and talk about the humble guardsmen. In fact, the humblest of humble guardsmen, the Platoon Squads, Specialist Squads, and Heavy Weapon Teams. Now, starting off with the literal backbone of the Imperial Guard armies, the Platoon Squad. The guys and gals who have to slog through the muck, fight everything the galaxy has to offer, and somehow come out the other side not looking like a mangled chicken on a motorway. Yeah, it's quite a tall order, and the Imperial Guard, whilst equipped with I don't want to say the best because that's just simply a lie, equipped sufficiently as the Imperium decides for the job. An Imperial Guardsman, once they've completed their basic training, is issued a flak suit of armour. It's not going to stop much. It will helpfully prevent you from suffering too much when it comes to, say, fragmentation rounds or any bruising. Like, if you punch this stuff, you're going to hurt your wrist and probably break a finger or two. It's tough enough for ballistic rounds as well, at least low caliber ballistic rounds, and you get a helmet, so that's cool. But typically speaking, it's just your chest and shoulders. Everything below the waist, well, the Imperium kind of decided that you're going to be spending most of your time in trenches, and so your lower half is probably not going to get shot that much anyway. And if you're charging forward, you don't want heavy armor on your legs slowing you down, so yeah, you're not really protected that much from, well, anything. And Imperial Guardsmen will also be given as standard frag grenades. Fantastic, lovely little explosive grenades which are great against lightly armoured troops. It's utterly useless against a tank, but if you somehow manage to pop the top open, chuck one of those inside, yeah, it's a good chance you're going to kill the entire crew. The additional basic Imperial Guard equipment for our lucky guardsmen are as follows. A combat knife or bayonet, depending upon the regiment you are from. Forces of Krieg, a particularly sharpened entrenching tool. Some very basic medical supplies. An entrenching tool, which, isn't sharpened, which the Kriegers like to do to theirs, a gas mask, and the Imperium Infantryman's Uplifting Primer, a book about essentially how to deal with the worst the galaxy has to offer, including how to engage an orc in hand-to-hand combat. Spoiler warning, don't. And if you think this stuff is only good for toilet paper, well, don't catch a commissar hear you say that or use it, because that's an instant bolt pistol to the head. If you're lucky enough, you might get your hands on a camo cloak, although don't count on it. And one of your member will usually be given a Voxcaster, essentially a portable radio transceiver that allows the commanders to yell at you to move over the top of that trench into the heavy automatic gunfire and try to survive. You will also be given a cantina for your fluids and liquids, and if you're lucky enough, you might even be able to scrounge some cigarettes from somewhere. Because boy, you're going to need something to help steady your nerves. And then, of course, you are issued with the humble lasgun. Efficient, stylish, able to operate in almost any condition, doesn't particularly care about getting wet, and extremely low maintenance, this little laser pointer is the basic weapon for the average guardsman, and frankly, it's produced in absurd quantities. Billions upon billions of these all across the Imperium are shipped out to the lucky guardsman who gets to play laser pointer with a Chaos Space Marine, and rapidly find out how terrifying a prospect that is. It, against unarmored targets, it's going to do some serious wounds. It's a laser beam at the end of the day. It will punch holes through flesh, no problem. It just starts to struggle when it encounters any real kind of armor. Enough concentrated fire, or if you fiddle with the settings, it'll do larger, more powerful beams, but that tends to make the gun expire more quickly. and the tech priests are very not fond of people fiddling with technology like this and not respecting it. But if you are lucky, you might even get your hands on crack grenades. These fantastic grenades are, well, they're your armor-piercing grenades. Chuck these towards lightly armoured vehicles and you're going to have some fun watching their tracks blow off, or their grav generators just, well, cease to function. And then you're put into a squad which will be led by a competent sergeant. Well, competent is, again, this is the Imperial Guard, my friend. Competency is not rare, but it's certainly something that gets taught through harsh experiences. And if you become a sergeant in the Imperial Guard, you've probably been through enough to actually teach you how to not get your men and women killed. But the basic Guardsman squad is typically speaking between 10 individuals, with a sergeant leading them, a voxcaster for that extra communication between your units. Sometimes the units can be even bigger, between 20 to 40 individuals, each with their own sergeants who remain in close proximity to one another, and with various voxcasters. You can give one of your individuals a specialist weapon. This could be in the form of, say, melters, flamers, plasma guns, or grenade launchers. And you can have a heavy weapon tag along with the team as well. This is typically in the form of a las cannon, mortar, heavy bolter, autocannon, or a missile launcher, each one having its own variations, but I'll talk more about that when we come to the heavy weapon teams. So an infantry squad is actually relatively robust, and that's not including the weapons you can give your sergeant. Your sergeant can have all kinds of things, including the Holy Imperial Bolt Pistol, something that is very rarely issued to a sergeant. Usually it's a status symbol given to one who has done something quite heroic. If he's extraordinarily brave and has done something incredibly heroic, then he might even be given a smaller variant of the Astartes bolt gun. These things have one hell of a kick though and are very difficult to wield. Hell, the bolt pistol is reduced in size just so it doesn't break the person's wrist every time they use it. And if your Guardsman Sergeant is feeling particularly saucy, and is particularly in good terms with the Department Ministorum and the Mechanicum, he might be lucky enough or suicidal enough to be given a plasma pistol. Now this is something that's going to put most creatures dead in their tracks. Just don't roll a 1. Just make sure that when you point the thing, you keep your other hand as far away from it as possible and point the pistol as far away from you as you possibly can. Because, yeah, plasma. I've talked about plasma. It's a little unreliable and has this horrible habit of exploding in really unpleasant moments, usually removing a limb in the process. On the whole, the sergeant is usually going to be equipped with a chainsword and a las pistol. But if he's particularly lucky, he can get his hands on a power sword, something that will mean he can actually stand a chance when it comes to cutting through Space Marine armor, or a power fist, which means if he can get a good hit in, he's going to crush anything that gets in his way, including tanks, if he's feeling particularly brave. And a platoon squad really is what you make of it. Whilst they're not going to withstand against, say, Chaos Space Marines on their own, that's kind of the point. Platoon squads are there to hold the enemy at bay. They're there to shoot lots of las guns, make smaller chaff units disappear, and also keep the enemy in one location when they get to close combat, where your numbers, as you'll have multiples of these squads, help prevent your lines from being overrun, allowing your tanks, heavy artillery and specialists to just pound anything that gets too close. And like I said, as you can give them specialist weapons and heavy weapons, there's a great degree of utility that you can use with them. You can have them run forward and be very up close in your face with, say, flamethrowers, grenade launchers, melter guns, and instead of taking a heavy weapons team, you just make them able to run around more effectively. Or you can have them camp in a building or a fortification, take a heavy weapon, take a much more longer range specialist weapon, like, say, a plasma gun, and, well, just sit down, hunker in, and blast anything that gets too close. And of course, when it comes to your sergeant, depending on how much you think they're going to get into close combat, depends on how much you want to, well, if you're feeling generous. If you've got points left over, there's no harm giving them a power sword. And if you want them to break open fortifications and tanks, give the sucker a power fist and see what happens. There's been some surprising things that I remember from my Mordian Iron Guard when you give them power weapons, and it's very shocking for the occasional Space Marine player who goes, wait, he's got a power weapon? And you just let your other dude and dudettes get killed whilst your sergeant pops in a couple hits with a power sword and manages to kill a couple Space Marines, which is always fun times. Now then we move on to the specialists. You can in fact have an Imperial Guard unit that is purely made up of specialist weapons. These individuals are typically treated in a more elite fashion, as their weapons are, well, frankly, expensive. And you have a bunch of them all together means, yeah, if you lose all of them, that's going to be costly for the Imperium. These specialists tend to be taken around in chimeras, or used in various skirmishing roles where they will use their specialized weapons to get up close, personal, and pick off particular targets. For example, if you took an entire unit with flamethrowers, your job was to make sure that your flanks didn't get overrun with, well, chaff. Tyrannid swarms, orc boys, chaos cultists, things with relatively light armor which multiple flamethrowers will happily burn away. If you took an entire specialist unit with, say, plasma guns, first of all, you're just begging for one of them to explode and kill a poor guardsman, but it does mean you have a very effective anti-heavy infantry and anti-tank unit. Especially as you could take multiples of these units, and, well, that's just kind of hilarious how much plasma you can potentially bring to the battle. Or melter guns, or grenade launchers, which have the added benefit of being multi-purpose, considering you can take them with frag and crack grenades. And then, of course, there is the heavy weapon team. These obviously are not going anywhere near the front lines, and should be nicely settled away behind your infantry squads, where you can make use of las cannons, mortars, heavy bolters, and rocket launchers. And, well, yeah, it's pretty straightforward. You just make them sit back and shoot the bejesus out of anything that gets too close. And the fun thing about these Imperial Guard units is, really, you don't just buy one or the other. There's no point having an entire Imperial Guard army where your infantry is made up of just platoons, or just specialists, or just heavy weapons. The best way to get maximum use out of your Imperial Guard's effectiveness is to take a combination of all of them, and then have them work together to cover each other's weaknesses. The heavy weapon teams have fantastic heavy firepower against both heavy infantry, light infantry, and tanks, but obviously they have no chance of surviving a close combat encounter. Not that any Imperial Guard units are going to survive very well against a close combat specialist unit, but the platoon squads are there to slow the enemy down so your heavy guns can keep shooting. That's what their role is. Your specialists are there to cover the weaknesses of your platoons or your heavy weapons. And this is the thing I used to really enjoy about playing in the Imperial Guard. The Imperial Guard army is all about covering each other's weaknesses. And your infantry really do this to the best of their ability because of how utilitarian they are. And of course, keep some platoon commanders and some company commanders around to make sure that they do as they're told and don't run away like sissies, and have the occasional commissar shoot one of them in the head to make sure the point gets across. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this little video. I will make sure that more Imperial Guard videos are on their way, and I hope to hear from you all soon. Like and subscribe, check out the various social media pages, and I hope to hear from you all soon. Until then, take care everyone.